It's an interesting question, though. It is, and it's a big question because I bet it's something Blizzard wrestle with all the time.
Before jumping into World of Warcraft, I was playing a video game called Dark Age of Camelot. Hello there, we have a special guest.
I actually played the original, like the top-down real-time strategy Warcraft games.
And I think that's what really cemented my passion for the game, seeing so many other people that are passionate about it and sharing the experiences together.
The fact that you're still kind of talking and speculating about this game 20 years on is incredible.
Be mindful though, it's highly addictive.
So one of the main reasons that I set up Ready Mix Gaming was to tell stories about games and like the relationship with them and how I kind of bonded with them and the good stories and some of the bad stories. All the importance they've had on my life and the way that you can, you know, how I connect to them. The one I didn't feel like I could continue doing this series for too much longer though, without talking about one game which I had a lot of significant time with. And to do that, I brought on a friend to help me talk a bit about it because I have some knowledge of it from years past and not too much recent knowledge. So let me introduce you to my good friend, Mr. Skandar. How are you doing today? How the devil are you?
Hi, hello. I'm all right. It's quite hot today here in the UK, but I am doing very well. Yeah, thank you so much for your invitation. Right, I really appreciate it. And yeah, for people that probably do not know me through your channel, I make World of Warcraft content almost entirely focusing on competitive content like Mythic Plus, dungeon guides, routes, boss mechanics, or raiding or raids. And yeah, so I usually talk about the ridiculous amount of hours that I spend in World of Warcraft. So not only a game for a huge amount of time, but I also talk about gaming a lot. But yeah, I absolutely love it. So yeah, normally when people see me, I'm talking about things like defensive cooldowns, the best skills to use, what classes are meta in World of Warcraft, what will kill you in a high key dungeons or things like that. So yeah, but at the end of the day, it's not just about optimization, it's about, you know, how we express our love for the game.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, how long have you been playing World of Warcraft? Because like we talked about it a little bit a few months ago, but I didn't actually ask you. Like,
it's been a while. It's a bit worried. It's scary to say that, but basically I played World of Warcraft for probably too long. Is it almost 20 years? Almost, well, probably. But yeah, we started with classics and the initial expansions, and then took a break during uni, then returned when they were pushing the more recent competitive context with Mythic Plus dungeons, especially in Leech or Bath for Azeroth, Shadowland or Dragonflight, and then War Within, and finally Midnight. So the latest probably 5 expansions have been playing continuously. So it's been a while.
Because I think they're up to at least 10 expansions now, right? There's a lot of lore, a lot of history there, which is amazing. I don't know, I told you I got into Warcraft before World of Warcraft happened. So you may have seen, I did a video recently where I went into Half-Life and there was actually a little Warcraft Easter egg in there. But I actually played the original, like the top-down real-time strategy Warcraft games, and they had all the story that kind of like builds a lot of the lore that built into World of Warcraft. So it was when that happened, when that shift from like, you know, here's a top-down strategy game, and now here is a full open-blown world where you can explore, and that was quite a bit of a mind-blowing moment, you know, because it's just such a rich world, so detailed, so much lore, and so much amazing things.
No, absolutely. And before jumping into World of Warcraft, I was playing a video game called Dark Age of Camelot, and which was the early stages of online massive multiplayer games. And the transition was natural, but the best thing about all this was the infinite amount of hours you can throw at that and just keep exploring and build memories, build stories and relationships. So yeah, but certainly the past almost 20 years in World of Warcraft have been pretty full of content from Blizzard's side, but also adventures from our side.
Yeah. Funny enough, you mentioned that. My friend who I played World of Warcraft with, we'll talk about in a moment, he actually got his introduction from Dark Age of Camelot as well. So yeah, that feels like that was a nice anchor point for a lot of people. I do a series called Mixed Emotions, where I kind of like talk a little about my history of games, and I mentioned at the top of this and kind of like the feelings and connections I have. I also do a podcast called Shared Experiences, which is a little bit of like kind of like talking to people in the industry and talking to friends. So this is a little bit of something. This is a little bit of both, I think. And the reason why we're collaborating, because we wanted to. Basically, we decided we just wanted to have a chat and talk about Warcraft. So that's kind of the reason why we're doing this. But I think what we're going to look into with this is look about some of my history with it, some about Skandar's history with it, and then talk a bit about the differences between where World of Warcraft was 20 years ago, probably longer these days, to where it is today. So this is going to be quite a fun little topic just to go through. But I guess to kind of kick this off, like for me, I got my start with this from Final Fantasy XI. So I don't know if many people played this. Obviously, the better known Final Fantasy XIV is obviously thriving more and more almost every day. It's considered the other like-minded competitor to World of Warcraft. But I played that for a long time. I think I always found it quite a tricky one because it was. I found there was a steep difficulty curve on it, and it felt like it was just missing that Final Fantasy magic for me. Like it was the music was there and the characters were there, but like it was just missing something, which I think Final Fantasy XIV has nailed. And my friend, I played with a friend for a long time, the one who mentioned like Dark Age of Camelot. So we played together on Final Fantasy XI originally. And then I think after a while, because I was playing 11 for so long, I started seeing the reviews coming through for World of Warcraft. I think it was about a month in, and PC Gamer were just giving it 10 out of 10s, and this is the greatest game ever, and everyone needs to dive into this. So I figured I would just venture over and take a look. And I mentioned I've also got that prehistory of Warcraft as well. I love Blizzard games, so there was a reason for me to just dive over. And I didn't actually tell my friend at the time, so he was still playing Final Fantasy XI, and I kind of just went over, which was a little bad. But I was testing the waters just to see whether or not it was, how it would fare and what kind of game it would be and whether it's something I would enjoy. And I think it took me 2 days, and I realised this was home. This was where I was going to spend a long time. So I told him straight away. He dived over, and we immediately migrated over to World of Warcraft, and didn't really look back since. Did you have a similar experience to that when you dived in?
Yeah, I mean, the way you describe it is very much resonates with my own experience. For me, was on the as I say, from the Dark Age of Camelot break, and there were a few games that were emerging at the time. You mentioned Final Fantasy XI, for example, and there was a natural transition. There were a few that were trying to become the new game, but I think when just World of Warcraft happened, it was a major event in our lives, I would say, to the point that I think we associate places in game like Stormwind or Orgrimmar to the equivalent of basically homes. For those who love like Pokemon games, when you hear the soundtrack of a Pokemon Center, the music, you feel like, oh, this is safe. This is a safe space. Same as well. When we enter Stormwind or Orgrimmar, we feel that the level of, we're coming back home now, or, the classic map of World of Warcraft. But that was the same transition. And I think the social component of that you mentioned is really key, because I remember playing both games with friends, in real life friends or friends that I met online. And I think that's what really cemented my passion for the game, seeing so many other people that are passionate about it and sharing the experiences together while talking about real life situations, where all of that kind of fade into one and merge together. It was a very strong recipe, I'd say.
Like with the mix there of talking about real life friends anchoring in with friends you've met online, I think I had a similar thing as well. So with the Final Fantasy, I think because I'd had such a deep connection to Final Fantasy before I came into this, like I love Final Fantasy 10, 7, 8, 9 before that. So I think 11 was a natural jumping on point for me because I love those games. My friend actually was more into Final Fantasy Tactics, I think. So he'd actually come from that side of the chain. But I'd made friends actually from a fanfic Final Fantasy X website. It was like a forum, and people would just do like lots of fanfic about Final Fantasy X. They would talk about different the characters, create the little stories around that. And so I think I actually made some friends through that who I then went on to Final Fantasy 11 with, who then we all went on to Warcraft as well, and then we got into guilds and things down the road. But it was definitely a mix there of people in real life versus people you've met online. So I think that's really interesting that you said that as well.
Yes, I mean, I share your passion for Final Fantasy, and I'm just looking at my left, but I have a little collection of figurines from Final Fantasy IX in particular. But yeah, definitely, it's a natural transition from strategy games that we can play on your own, and then you connect with other peoples through this. So, and it's something very difficult to explain to others. Why do you enjoy this game so much? And technically, the social component of that is what make it unique. Because when people technically look at you from the outside, you kind of are playing by yourself on your computer, but it's a major difference from Final Fantasy X or 9 or other games where you're actually, yes, on your own in your room, but you're playing with like hundreds of people, talking on Discord, talking on your guild channel, and you inevitably build relations that are, in a way, real. Definitely powerful and definitely addictive as well. That's part of the recipe.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with that. I mean, I think the other thing with World of Warcraft technically was, the storytelling. Like, we know Blizzard are great storytellers. I mean, you only need to look at the cutscenes in Diablo and Warcraft 3. People to this day still say Warcraft 3 has one of the best stories in a real-time strategy game because of the Lich King saga, which then fed into, Wrath of the Lich King, right? So there was a big continuing on point from that. But I think that was what captured me a little bit, because I think 11 was quite disappointing for the story, whereas 14 is literally all story, and 14 is a fantastic story. So if you've not played that as well, I thoroughly recommend it. But 11 was just a bit barren, and it just, like I mentioned, didn't really feel Final Fantasy, whereas Warcraft just had this so much lore. It felt like they just had almost too much lore they needed to get through. And it was a humor to it as well, which was great. And I just think everything just works. So in the beginning, that's why it's still to this day such a played game. I think everything just worked for Blizzard and Warcraft in that sense. Did you feel that as well with the storytelling?
Yes, there is an element of perhaps at point in time feeling a bit overwhelmed by the massive amount of stories and narratives and content in WoW. But that's the magic of the game, the fact that, yes, you can push your competitive content, but you also like the fantasy, you like the lore behind your class. So you can be passionate about the various storylines of what's happening, for example, in WoW, since classic or vanilla, and you try to follow how this story developed to, Midnight that we're playing right now, with a new expansion literally being released this month, or in a few days. So yeah, so you see the continuity of character developments in the story, and you attach to this character like Sylvanas, and you see, okay, she is somewhat still mentioned. I don't want to spoil anything to anyone, but obviously the storylines continue, and you're there. But also looking at your characters, the reason why you attach yourself to a character is because you identify with the fantasy of the character. For example, a paladin tank that has all the lore of in-game of the class and of the order of paladins, or you have your druid with your order of druids and your circle of druids, and so you're not just playing a bear druid because it's strong, but also because you are kind of linked to the story development of that class. Same is for Brewmaster Monk with the Pandaria expansion legacy, or the Blood Decay, very dark kind of way of playing the game and the class, but also the fantasy attached to it. So definitely is another strength of WoW.
So I was a paladin, and I literally was one of these that kind of, I moved between everything. So sometimes I would play the tank role, sometimes it'd be the healer, sometimes it'd just be the DPS. So I never really stuck to one role, but I have to tell you, I used to shit myself thinking about being a tank. So it's scary, man. Like, like before we get into stuff, like, how do you deal with that pressure? How have you found that? Or do you find it pressure?
So I think there's, in classic, from Dungeons and Dragons to other video games, you always have these roles that are a little bit more at the front of the battle, yeah, and you kind of have to keep yourself alive so that the rest of the group can do their things. And so playing the tank is very much, I want to say, a little bit more like the leader role in a group that decide the pace of a dungeon, what type of packs of mobs you're gonna attack first. Obviously taunts them, it tags them, and it brings them in, and obviously if the tank dies, everyone else die. So there is the pressure of strategizing the type of route you're gonna go through a massive dungeon, keeping the pace, fast enough to be able to complete it, but not too fast that you overwhelm your friends, and at the same time maintaining yourself alive. So I think for new players, I rarely recommend to start with a tank role because of all these components. You have to learn dungeons, yeah, and there's pressure from the other players that you know what you're doing and you should do it perfectly. While if you play a DPS role, for example, a demon hunter or a warlock or even a paladin rat or other specs, you can definitely make some mistakes and even die in game, and it's kind of okay. You can still time a key or complete a dungeon or even complete a raid boss with no major consequences. So definitely there is a lot of pressure on being a tank. But have you tried on Final Fantasy XIV playing more like a tank role, or were you more like a DPS spec?
I think, again, I tend to go DPS because I'm very casual, so I'll dip in and out, and so I don't feel like when I experience the dungeons, it's usually for the first time, and then I'll only play them to get through the levels a little bit. So I play a little bit in that way. But I have tried as a tank, and I've done it once or twice, and it is quite interesting. As soon as you learn the routes, it does feel a lot better. But I do feel you have to understand that. You're absolutely right. You have to understand the layout first. That's a massive part of it. And then you feel like, right, okay, I can lead this group comfortably now because I know exactly where I'm going. I know the shortcuts. I know the bosses you don't need to fight, the bosses you don't necessarily need to fight. So I think that plays a huge role in it, definitely.
DPS, would you be a range DPS or a melee DPS? What would be your ideal?
I mostly melee, to be honest. I used to play, I played a rogue for a long time as well on WoW. So I used to love my rogue. But I do like I did try the hunter for a little bit, and I found range to be quite interesting. I feel like it's something I probably would have enjoyed more. My friend used to be the hunter, so that's why I never went that route. Melee was definitely my preferred because I kind of just used to enjoy, because I felt like everyone used to huddle around either the mobs or they used to huddle around like a particular character, and I always found it easier just to be in that position. It seems like I'm always doing something. Because I don't know about you, when you first played, I guess it's different for you now, but like I sometimes feel a bit like if I'm not in a vital role, people are worried that I'm not doing anything in a party, especially if they're a small group. Did you ever find that?
There's always that pressure that are you contributing enough? Are you doing well enough? And in World of Warcraft, this has changed quite a lot, for example, over the past few years with new add-ons, new softwares that can track the performance of each player, which is pretty horrible if you think about that. But in game you have something called details or damage meter that allows you to see how each person perform in terms of healing, damage, and other utilities in game like interrupts, kicks, dispels. In game you can monitor that, and then after that there is the logs. There's a website called Warcraft Log where you can go and see how people have performed in your key or in your dungeon, in your raid. And so a lot of the game now has moved to it's a reviewing of numbers game. Yeah, so for like this level of performance to be like highly competitive, you want to make sure that your numbers are like they call it parses. You're having this parse like 90%, 99%, and so it's now more of a game of meeting that type of threshold, and obviously the pressure is quite significant, especially on new players, because you'll have to learn the rotation, what each mob does, what your skills are, the best combination and sequence of skills. And there's a lot of pressure on new players, for sure. But yeah, you can also play other contests that are a bit less pressurizing. For example, they have different tiers of raids, obviously normal, heroic, or mythic. Different level of keys from 0 to plus 22 mythic dungeons. But also now they introduce new content that was not available before, including some solo dungeons. They call them delves that you can do by yourself or you can do with others. And they're about to introduce some mega mega dungeons as well, which you can take like days to clear, and is more about exploration and less about the pressure to perform well, which is definitely a thing.
Yeah, because I was going to say, because when I first started playing, I was doing like 18-hour days, right? So I was like, I think this was right in the peak where I would spend, well, in a funny way, I'd actually, sometimes I was in a dungeon, I would fall asleep at my keyboard. Because I was just like, it was like 4 a.m, I'm just there plugging away, and all of a sudden, like, just crashing out. So there was a bit of that, I think, in the early days, because I just wanted to grind, I wanted to get the best gear, I wanted to kind of like, get more gold so I could use the auction house and things like that. So I was really into it at one point. But obviously I think that's, I even if I was to come back to it tomorrow, I couldn't do the 18-hour days now. We'd probably be looking more like 3 to 4, at a max. I guess like that's when you're mentioning that, I mean, do you feel like because there's what 20 years of game there now? Is it hard, do you think, for someone to just like start from scratch tomorrow, or even like after a long layoff come back into it now? And do you feel there's enough there to entice people back?
I think so. So there are different layers to the game, and I think all of us have been through these phases of going in and out of the game. I myself took a break at some point. I think after Dragonflight, so there was Shadowland, Dragonflight, and there I took a break, then returned in The War Within Season 2. And obviously, every time you take a break, you almost start from scratch, because the way the game is now structured is that every season is pretty much almost a new game, yeah? So if you join the game, for example, in August, you will be at the same level as everyone else. And it's the same every 4 or 6 months. The game reset entirely, which means that it's much more accessible for new players or returning players, but it's also much more difficult at the same time. So even though the gear is 0 and you can gear very fast, you can level very fast and catch up in a few days with everyone else, and the system is designed to help you. You deal with 20 years of accumulated World of Warcraft language. So for example, if I say, when you join, I'm sure you come back at some point, and you and I are gonna go in a dungeon together, yeah? Or in a raid, and I'm gonna say, oh, make sure you get your tier set, check that you cap your crests, make sure that you fill your vault slots, and also bring with you your beasts and at least 2 embellishments. Download your add-on, because we coders don't work anymore, and we're gonna check your logs during the run. We're gonna do a +10. Basically, what I said didn't make any sense whatsoever for anyone who does not play World of Warcraft obsessively, pretty much on a daily basis. So there is that gap. Even though the game is super accessible now for new players, the real barrier is the players and the language that we have been developing over the past 20 years, yeah? So none of those things would make any sense to anyone else. But it takes time to just adjust again, because mechanically the game is super accessible. It would take you a couple of weeks to catch up with any of my characters I've been playing for the past few years. However, the culture is what is intimidating, but there's plenty of nice, friendly people and communities out there that can help you catch up with all of those things.
And that's a good thing. I think that's the one thing I've always found with Warcraft is the community. I think it's always been the key part of it. Is even at any point I've got a guild, I feel like will always still be there if I was to log back in. They've been there for 20 years and they're still going. Like there's some people there, and I feel that's having a guild was a big part of really like introducing me and getting me used to things. Obviously there's a lot of work around the forums, there's people actively in there, you've got discords like yourself you've got set up, so I mean there's a lot of ways of like communicating now. But I guess what was always interesting for me was I started in a roleplay server. So I mean I don't know if that's still the case now, but when you first started up there was a PvP server where you used to have the strict lines where the Alliance and the Horde used to kind of meet in like a place and just like have a big battle. And there was always the roleplay server, so I was always about storytelling, and I really enjoyed that side of it. And I just like I found some of my best moments were just like being sat at a campfire for a couple of hours, just chatting to random strangers who would just wander by, or just chat to someone who I knew, and we'd just meet up somewhere and catch up. I guess did you have any like kind of memories like that, or has it always been for you kind of like focusing on the game itself?
So very much it depends at what point in time we look at that experience, because early days WoW, or even the tail end of Dark Age of Camelot, we did have those type of experiences that are more like in-game role-playing, in-game conversations. And there is still the element in World of Warcraft. You can still go to servers that are more like RP. However, now the boundaries between the factions are fading. You can play with any faction and you can play across any server now. You can just queue for a dungeon or a raid, and anyone from any faction class servers can just join your team, and it becomes a cross-faction, cross-server team, which is really cool because it brings people together. But you lose a bit of that competitiveness, that more like is lore-based, if you wish. I do remember spending some time sitting at like 5 a.m. looking at the sunrise in the game and talking with people in the game about, you know, where to go next, what to do next. And I think that's something that WoW has been trying to do, try to recreate that magic of the old game. Like, can you still feel the old game? And there's a lot of the element of nostalgia that very much carry the game as it is, and somehow we want to live those experiences again. The experience of exploration, experience of talking to your friends and figuring things out in the game as you explore this massive universe. That has gone in a way, because with all these YouTube channels, and I am part of the problem, telling people what's happening next, what the new competitive game is going to look like, what the classes are, with all the data mining, the element of surprise is almost gone. And so even the experience of sitting in the game with others and talking is gone. But the social element is still very much there through Discord, for example. And now there's a new integration in the game that if you chat on Discord, you see in the game, and if you chat in the guild chat, you see in Discord. So it kind of connects people a bit more. So that is still there. But do you think that legacy of World of Warcraft is a good thing, the fact that WoW is trying to reconnect with its old self, or do you think is a limit till an extent of people wanting that experience still?
It's such an interesting question, isn't it? Because I think, you know, when the game started, like, for instance, for me, those first few years were fucking magical. Like that, the build up to the Burning Crusades expansion, where the portal, I don't know if you remember this, when everyone was speculating about walking through the Dark Portal, like there was so much anticipation for that. And there were people like queuing, just waiting for the Dark Portal to open so they could wash through and start the next expansion. So I think that those are some of the early core memories I have. And I mentioned, like, you know, just sitting and watching sunsets. And I think that for me that haunts me, like, to this day. Like, years later, those memories are so specific, and that's what I love about WoW. So that part of me would say 100% yes. Get in touch with your roots, get in touch with what you had, get in touch with the game as it used to be. But then, is that moving with the times, right? Because obviously we are in such, technology has moved on so much in 20 years, right? I mean, it's like, even, I think back then, like, mobile phones, I don't think were really that common at that point even. And that's a huge game changer immediately. Obviously, people's internet speeds, like, you know, we've got like really, you'd still have quite clunky internet back then, whereas now it's like rip-roaring super fast, you know, like it's, you can download terabytes at a time. So, I mean, I think there's a part of me there's a nostalgic part of me, and I think it goes back to the retro gaming side of things, where, you know, you look at things rose-tinted glasses and you want the world to be what it was 40, 30, 20 years ago, but it's just not. And I think if the game doesn't evolve with the current trends, that's when it will fail. And I think that's where WoW is struggling, or it's benefiting, is it's balancing the two, and that's why it has sustained itself for so long. It's an interesting question, though. It is, and it's a big question, because I bet it's something Blizzard wrestle with all the time.
Yes, definitely, absolutely. There is this. I'm not sure if you've seen recently one of the competition, the World. The race for World First, when teams compete to be the first one to clear or defeat a raid entirely. That was, I believe, literally a few months ago, when the new expansion came out, Midnight Season 1, and they released this new raid with Lura, this sort of divine, godlike entity of darkness and void, and really, really strong final boss for an epic raid, really. and you could see these players from the US and Europe competing, not sleeping for a week, try to defeat it, and you could watch them. And I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. So we were watching it, and everyone had data mined everything about that boss. They just had to implement the strategy. But what happened is during the fight, at the end of the fight, one of the teams defeated Lura first, and they were like jumping with joy and releasing weeks of frustration. And then at that point they found out there was a secret Lura phase. There was another phase. I know. So for us as World of Warcraft players that are absolutely used to data mining and knowing everything, was like, what, a secret phase? And for them, these teams that prepare for weeks to they have built a team knowing how the fight was gonna go. They were not prepared for that, and they lost. Yeah. They couldn't defeat Lura that night, which means that another team at that point could see that there was a secret phase, and they had an advantage over them to reshape the team and then fight. So that was first time in probably a decade almost that we could see a moment of actual surprise playing a video game, which is something that really we don't experience much anymore, partially because of technology advancing so much that and also the contents created around video games, that we're always trying to look for the best way to play the game, or the fastest or most effective way, and they unfortunately spoiled the surprise a little bit.
Semi-related, but obviously like the new Spider-Man film that just dropped, right? Obviously their marketing had this one specific thing. Who is Sadie Sink playing in the film? And obviously I'm not going to say who that is on this, so don't worry. But that was their one specific thing, and right up until the line, no one had any idea who that was. And so I guess that was a kind of a planned surprise, so that's slightly different. Whereas what you're saying there is very spontaneous and unexpected. But obviously, there are so few surprises in this day and age now, and I think when they are there, and when you're genuinely surprised by something, it hits you so much deeper. So, yeah, I mean, that goes back to the classic WoW, where like we didn't know what was coming, whereas now it is very much a case of, yeah, we expect this, we'll get this, it's going to come at some point. We've seen this at like, even if it's 9 months down the line, right? So it's those are refreshing moments, I think.
It is, and I think it's something that Blizzard eventually will have to consider, yes? Because it is the usual balance between maintaining the identity of the game, and they've been trying to maintain a sense of, building on the sense of nostalgia that very much motivates most of us to play, but also taking some risks. So that's we know franchises that are stuck in that sort of limbo. We know that, for example, Nintendo or even the Pokemon franchise, sometimes they do struggle taking risks, but when they do fantastic things. For example, some of the recent Zelda version of the game, or some of the new attempts of redesigning the experience of gaming in the Pokemon universe overall. And when they do take this risk, they're like incredible experiences. So Blizzard, I think, should learn a bit from these other experiments and try to take a bit of risk, because obviously we love the feeling of repeating things. We are a little bit like hamsters in a wheel, pretty much every season, different flavor, same concept. We love it, fair enough. But just now they attempted the new housing experience in World of Warcraft. It's a risk. They have taken a risk, but it's not like housing has never done before in a online game. But at least they tried something new, better than the Garrison they tried a decade ago, for sure. But some new players have been attracted to the game, and new players will continue to come also because of that. But yes, definitely there is the balance, and managing the nostalgia, managing the identity of the game, what people love, and taking some risks.
So something else I kind of loved about early WoW as well was that I was going through some really rough times like 20 years ago. So I had a bit of a career crisis. So like obviously I'm now working in the games industry, which is what I was aspiring to do. But back then I was really didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. I was still at home. I was still trying to kind of like, I had some like difficulties with like relationships, struggled to make friends, you know, and like I've had a couple of bad breakups. There was just a sequence of events that were happening in my personal life that WoW was the consistent thing that I had. And so yeah, there was times like the friend that I joined WoW with, he eventually like stopped playing and he went on to other stuff, and so I was kind of on my own a little bit at one point, and then I left him and he was on his own at one point, so we started like going back to the game at different points. But yeah, I mean, I guess like it's always been just like, also the great part of it is obviously it's a good game, but I think it's just been such a good community tool as well, going back to what you were saying originally. I mean, have you found that as well for you in your experience?
The World of Warcraft is escapism in the most quintessential definition of the term, but not in a negative way. I have used World of Warcraft for that specific reason as well. And not just World of Warcraft, in general, gaming is an excellent way to take a break from life in general. It's just an extension of life, really. But it's a happy place. So while going back to our teenage years, obviously, where, you know, hoping to go back to your room and just jump into Azeroth or Avalon or yeah, and hide there in whatever form, whether it's Dark Age of Camelot or World of Warcraft, and still is the same. Well, I remember during the COVID pandemic, I used World of Warcraft as a way to connect with others, yeah, establish those relationships, build those relationships online. So some friends joined me online, and we were just doing dungeons together and just having fun and exploring in a way that was accessible to us during a time of challenge of COVID. And then again, when I struggle with my career in recent times or change of job, there is a moment where you feel a bit more vulnerable and you say, okay, I'm gonna get my shield and my hammer and I'm gonna go into dungeons for the rest of the night, and that's great. It's actually very much therapeutic in a way, and I found it not to be escapism in a negative way. It very much is restorative, and yeah, definitely we share the experience for sure, yes. And I think, do you still think that people are somewhat called to World of Warcraft to, you know, trying to find a refuge from the outside world? I think very much so.
I think COVID is a great example, because like the world was on fire at that point, and you know, I think when the games that people go to at the time was Animal Crossing, because it just launched just as COVID hit, and everyone just dived into Animal Crossing because that was the way to kind of escape. And I think there was even talk shows where people were in it was crazy at one point. But World of Warcraft also, because it never left. It was always there. It was a consistent thing. There was still content coming out, you know, and like it was. I don't actually find it strange that I didn't go back to WoW during that period, because it would have been an obvious point to have gone back into it. But I had like other stuff I was playing at the time, checking out. But yeah, I think it's just a great. It's always there, you know, and I think that will be a sad day when it does go, because I mean, obviously, you know, we're 20 years into this now, and you have to wonder, like, when does this stop? Does it stop? And what would replace it? So I think there's a bit of that. I think that I'm not sure about where the future would be for WoW in that sense, but it's so good that it's still been that consistent thing for so many people to just know they can dive into it at any point.
Indeed, the question is very much why we are still in WoW, really. But it's just this combination of things that keep us very much interested, from, as you say, the competitive element of it, the challenge, the social aspect of it, the nostalgia, and the fact that somewhat they keep adding to the story, they keep adding to that. And they're trying to innovate themselves a little bit, but we are all expecting a strong plot twist at some point, whether they reset the whole universe and, you know, and start a new story entirely. You know, there's some people speculating on the fact that the new WoW will, at the end of this new trilogy of expansions, so World of Warcraft Midnight Season 1, the Curse of Vulatek, and then the Titans expansion later on in 2027, will probably bring us maybe to an end of World of Warcraft as we know it, and they will cancel Azeroth entirely. So there's some speculations on there where they will reset the story and you start a complete new narrative from scratch. We don't know if that's the case. It's, you know, speculations, but until then, I think I'm still gonna be tanking probably.
It's because I mean, like, I remember they were working on another game, Titan, I think it was, for years, and that got cancelled. And then there was speculation about a World of Starcraft at one point, and then that kind of didn't go anywhere. And you just feel like, and it was, I remember seeing it recently. They were talking about, oh, it's going to come to Xbox Game Pass, so like console players will be able to play it, which would have blown it up even more. So it's just like, even now, the fact that you're still kind of talking and speculating about this game 20 years on is incredible. You know, that like it's how many games can say that? Not many. EVE Online maybe is probably the only other thing I can think of, but even that is, you know, very niche in that sense. So incredible.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the franchise of Final Fantasy, in one way or another, keep people attached to some characters, some stories, but definitely they have to continue to reinvent themselves. And I don't know what's gonna happen next. Obviously, we know that this trilogy of the World Saga is gonna end with the last Titan. What's gonna happen then? I don't know. Some people are talking about Classic Plus, a revitalized Classic WoW. There's some announcements that we are expecting in November or around the November time. So yeah, still TBC, but definitely is trying to manage this nostalgia versus innovation and what can realistically do now. But yeah, oh, hello there. We have a special guest.
Hello. What are you doing here? Well, I guess a good way to close this would be, you know, how would you encourage people to would you encourage people to start playing now? If you've never played WoW before, what would you encourage people to kind of like dive in, or would you say it's a bit too far gone now?
No, I would say please give it a go. It's so much fun. There's so many layers, so many different areas. If you love crafting, you can spend all your time farming items, picking flowers, getting metals, and be from a blacksmith to an alchemist, and so you can enjoy the profession side. If you like collection, you can collect your mounts or build your own housing game as well, with a lot of collection side of the game where you go and find the best items for your house and share your design for your house, or just the collecting side of it. Yeah, besides that, you can enjoy the social aspects of connecting with other people that enjoy gaming through your guilds and do some relaxed content, whether you enjoy exploring dungeons or delves or going into some normal or heroic raids. But if you're also a hardcore gamer, World of Warcraft remain one of the most challenging video games. I obviously love games like Elden Rings, and I platinumed that till they burned the game, but World of Warcraft remains several times more complex than that in terms of difficulty level. When if you play one boss in Elden Ring maybe 100 times, in World of Warcraft it would take 500 attempts to clear. So if you love high-end, high competitive games, there's also that for you. So I would say there's something for everyone in that game, and why not give it a go. Be mindful though, it's highly addictive, and I have no responsibilities, like no responsibilities if you end up being addicted to the game again.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I did say 18-hour days. I mean, that was pretty common at one point, so be prepared. Then Elden Ring, I think I've spent some time on that mine. So yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe
hopefully, and I look forward to going to a mythic dungeon with you. I hope I can tank for you if you wanna. What class would you pick then if you jump in? Would that be a rogue or would that be a caster?
Oh, see, I think I would like to so I didn't play casters too much. And I did have a warlock at one point, and because I used to follow the trends a little bit, because I had I don't know if you're the same as you. I used to create a bunch of characters, and I would just dive into them time to time. And like with the expansions, you got the little level boosts, so you sometimes could get right up to the level you could be. So I used to kind of like follow that. Oh, what's the meta? What's the best class to go? So sometimes it was paladin, sometimes it was warlock. So I think I might actually like to try a warlock at some point again, because I quite enjoyed playing having the the range and the variety there. So maybe a caster.
Very strong class right now. Rogue Outlaw really strong at the moment. So if you come back as a rogue, you'll be very much meeting at a demand in the game. But yeah, there's arms warriors that are in demand, and mage arcane also very much wanted. So yeah, Polyprot, good healer, good tank, holy paladin.
I always used to find it was funny because we used to do like little PvP duels outside like the town cities at one point just to kind of like test each other. And I always used to find, even like back in the early days, people used to rate the mage as like the top class because like the polymorph, right? As soon as it's the cheat code, it's the polymorph code. So everyone used to really rate mages even then. So it's interesting to see they're still kind of very much in the mix as the classes to play. But hey, this is really awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. Is there anything you want to kind of close out with?
Just to say thank you, Ray. I generally love this talking to you and be part of this. And yeah, whenever you want to explore more part of the World of Warcraft universe, very happy to. I'm sure that some people will continue to play and meet new friends or, you know, best friends or more. So yeah, if you do come back, let me know and I'll be happy to be your tank in a mythic dungeon.
You will literally be the first person I call. Yeah, but this is Skandar Tank. Make sure to check him out on YouTube. Fantastic channel. The tips and tricks are super thorough. The detail is incredible. The work and the effort that goes into it, I can't imagine how much time is spent doing that. So, well worth checking out. If you're the same as me, you're thinking about maybe looking to come back, cannot recommend Skandar's channel enough. So do check that out. And